Hi, I'm Curious Cass, and this is Curiosity Junkie. Today's guest recently spent 3 months in Costa Rica. She's here to share what she learned about herself, her yoga practice, sea turtles, and surrendering. Please welcome Summer Halloran. Hi, Summer. Thank you so much for being on the podcast.
Hey, Cass. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Well, I want to dive into lots of good stuff with you. You recently took a trip to Costa Rica to become certified yoga teacher and did a little adventuring, I think, while you're there. So I definitely want to talk about that. But let's start with how we know each other, which is growing up in the Midwest. You and my daughter were friends. And I find it really interesting that you both somehow ended up in Colorado.
Yeah, I think it's super bizarre. And because I know that her and I kind of went separate paths when we graduated college, and she went to Seattle and I stayed in Missouri. And then I was in Colorado for a couple of years. And then she randomly was like, hey, I'm moving to Boulder. And it's been amazing having her here with me.
Yeah. I know that that's usually what happens. You guys kind of go on your own path. And I have friends like that too, but it's nice that you can just pick up kind of like where you left off and regroup and reconnect and start a whole new friendship at a different age and in a different time in your life.
Yeah, I think that it's interesting because obviously I've been friends with your daughter Kelly now for like over 10 years, which is really crazy to think about. But her and I talk frequently about how we've just been progressively changing and growing ever since we've become friends. Because you think about it, when you're in high school, you're a completely different person than what you are in college. And then you get done with college and you start figuring out some real world things, and you're completely different than when you were in college. And now that I'm going on 28 years old, I think that I'm at this different point in my life where I truly understand like who I want to be and who I am to its core. And I think that's like really beautiful. And it's taken quite a while to get there, probably 10 years, but here we are.
Yeah. And I do think Kelly and I have talked about this. There's something about that age, like 27, 28, where you really start to reflect on who you are, not who your parents have brought you up to be, not who society says you should be, not what school has taught you, but who are you and what do you want out of life? It's like you're really in that reflective state, kind of, you're at an age where you really start to kind of question things, I think.
Yeah, exactly. I think it's just you realize that there's no limitations binding you to some sort of narrative that you need to be upholding to.
Yeah.
It's like a truly free, like a freeing opportunity.
Yes, it truly is. And I'm so proud of both of you for, taking some big steps, some pretty big unknown. There's a lot of unknown in the paths that you guys have chosen. And I think it's a beautiful thing to be brave like that. So what took you to Colorado? Let's start there.
Well, my degree was in geology and sustainability, and I never wanted to go the route of oil or science testing. I wanted to go more the route of education. And so I wanted to do environmental education. And after college, researching jobs and realizing that many of those jobs didn't exist in the Kansas City, Midwest area, I realized that there were a lot in Colorado. And so basically, I, on a complete whim, decided to move to Colorado. I was nannying at the time for a family that I had been watching for a couple of years, and that was going to be coming to a close. And I had been researching jobs, and I found a particular job in Colorado, and I applied to it. And without even knowing what was going on with that job, I decided to go visit Boulder for the first time and absolutely fell in love. While there, I met some potential roommates from a housing situation that I found on Craigslist, and was probably out here for about a long weekend, maybe 4 days, and absolutely loved it. So I went back home, and within 3 weeks of that trip, I traded in my car, bought an SUV, got rid of a lot of my stuff, packed my car, and moved out to Colorado. And plot twist, I did not get that job that I originally applied for.
Wow.
So, but I think that it all worked out the way it was supposed to. I came out here and I got a job in the service industry, and really met all of my current friends that I have out here. So I think that if someone was ever moving to an unfamiliar place where they didn't know a single person like I did, getting a serving job is a really easy way to meet friends.
Yes.
So then that's what brought me out to Colorado, and I've been kind of floating around in space, I think, for a little while out here, just trying to figure out what I'm doing. And I ended up going back into education and worked at a high school that was nearby me, back with special ed, which is what I was doing in Missouri before moving to Colorado too. And I was coming at the end of the school year of May of 2021, and I was applying for my master's program, and I was going to go and become a certified teacher and go down that rabbit hole. And that's something that I've always thought in my life, because I love education. I love connecting with people. And I think that I do make a decent teacher.
Yes.
And so I've always struggled with like becoming a certified teacher. So I was going down that rabbit hole, and I started applying for jobs and wasn't really landing anything. And that was when my partner suggested to travel instead. He's like, well, how about we travel before you get locked down into a career where we're not going to be able to like do this, or we will be able to, but it might be harder.
Right. And shorter periods of travel time.
Right. And so I was like, okay. And that's so unlike me, like to just like agree to something that's that adventurous without fully even thinking about it first.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's what we decided to do. We decided to go to Costa Rica for 3 months.
Wow. Now, did you go already kind of connected to yoga, or how did you come to the yoga piece?
Yeah, so I started kind of practicing yoga off and on about 4 years ago with my mom. We just used to go to a free yoga in a church in our hometown, and then kind of fell out of it. It was a time that I never really enjoyed my experiences during that time, because I wasn't in a centered place, and I was very insecure and not confident in the environment. Like, always looking around, wondering what people are thinking of you, and wondering if you're doing the correct posture, or like if you're doing it good enough in quotations.
Yes.
And then coming to Colorado, it was really after I met my current partner, Anthony, because he's really into yoga, and the pandemic happened. So when the pandemic happened, I decided to just start doing yoga. And it started with just doing yoga with Cassandra on YouTube every single day. And I did it every single day for a year. and just doing her videos. And then probably about 5 months before we left to go on our trip, I found a yoga studio in our town that we live in Longmont, Colorado, called Soul 19. And I absolutely fell in love. And so I started going to classes there, and I was going probably 5 to 7 days a week, and different types of classes, and just really broadening my horizons. And so I really give credit to that studio specifically, because they gave me the courage to actually say, okay, it's time. Like, it's time to do a yoga teacher training. It's something, yoga teacher training has been on my mind ever since I started doing the YouTube video yoga classes. But I never felt like I was actually prepared for it, and they say that you can go into a yoga program and actually have no experience at all. But I knew for me, I wanted to be able to have that background. And so, yeah, like going for those 5 months that frequently before the training, I think it really set me up physically and mentally and spiritually. Yeah, I
Have
happen to
you
think.
have you always been spiritual, or is that something that you've kind of come to through yoga or just later in life?
Well, I think spirituality is an interesting concept
Yes.
because I don't think that it even necessarily means the same thing as religion. I
No.
don't really think that they like go two and two together, and a lot of times people get them confused.
Mhm.
But I don't think I used to be a spiritual person. I used to kind of always believe that I think I used to always believe that like things happen for a reason and that maybe there's fate, maybe there's something, but I
Mhm.
never really trusted it.
Mm. Yeah.
And I don't think that like until I went to Costa Rica and my experience in Costa Rica, that was when I decided that, yeah, like I really do trust that there's in yoga, they would say like Brahma, like universal consciousness
Yeah.
is around you. And so I think that when you're very present and you're centered, grounded, um, then you're connected to that universal consciousness and like things will just like work out in your
Yeah.
favor. And it's really interesting. And I've seriously, like, I've witnessed it happen in
Yes. I
Costa
love
Rica.
that.
And so it's like crazy. You think that it's not true. And then you
Yeah.
witness it and you're just like completely blown away.
Yeah. 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 And I agree with you about the religious aspect versus spirituality. I've never considered myself religious because I feel like it's, like man based. And for
Yeah.
me, spirituality is like, I just feel a connectedness like to literally everything. That's kind of
Mhm.
what spirituality means to me. It's when I'm in that place where I feel completely connected, peaceful, and like you said, you trust. You kind of open up and just trust that everything's going to be it's going to work out the way it's going to work out. Because honestly, we don't control anything anyway.
Yeah, exactly. We're just puppets. So
Right. Right. No, I think that's beautiful. Well, let's talk a little bit about the Costa Rica experience because I followed you and your pictures and your postings and your yoga poses and the sea turtles. And it just looked like such an amazing experience. And Costa Rica is on my bucket list of places to travel to because I've just heard so many wonderful things, not just yoga based, but I have heard a lot of really wonderful yoga experiences about Costa Rica. But it is just a beautiful place to visit. What was your
I
favorite
think
part?
that,
Mhm.
oh my gosh, definitely the sea turtles. And for those listening who haven't seen my Instagram, got the experience of witnessing sea turtle hatchings crawling to the ocean. Um, and I still have the photo of the baby sea turtle on the back of my phone as a reminder. And I'll kind of just go into how that all came about because I think it was a really good example of talking about trusting and also surrendering. And so when we went to Costa Rica, I had my goal set. Like I wanted to see sea turtles.
Mm.
And in Costa Rica, they call it the Arribada, and it's like the great arrival of sea turtles.
Oh,
And
cool.
so specific places around Costa Rica a few times a year, they have hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of turtles come to the beach to nest about 3 to 4 days in a row. And so before going, I had researched all the types of turtles and where they go. And I'd figured out that there was a nesting site about 25 minutes south of where our yoga teacher training was.
Mm.
And I knew that January was a good time frame for it. And we also learned that like kind of around the full moon is a good time. And so we were like, okay, we're going to be there during the full moon. We'll be there during January. Like it's going to happen. And so we hadn't seen them any other places on our travels. And so it really came down to that last month at the teacher training. And I asked my teacher immediately for the first like 4 days, probably because she had to contact who works at that wildlife refuge. And so she said they'll let me know when the turtles come. And so I asked her like every single day for 4 days in a row. And the full moon happened and I didn't hear anything from her. So I honestly was so in the flow with everything that was going on in our training that I honestly didn't even think about it anymore. I completely let go of wanting to see them. And so it wasn't until the night before our very last day at our teacher training. So the next day, that last day was going to be a really big day. We were going to have our graduation. We were going to be teaching our last classes. Just a whole bunch of things jam-packed in the day. And so we were all like practicing our classes that we were going to be teaching. And then our teacher at the very last minute goes, I just got word, the sea turtles have arrived. There's a tour tomorrow morning at 4 a.m.
Oh, wow.
Mind you, this is our last day and it's a long day. We're going to be teaching, or we're going to have graduation. And like when we do our teachings in our program, like you do 3 hours of yoga in a row because you're doing 3 separate classes. And so like it's pretty strenuous on the body and mind. And so to wake up at 4 a.m. is like a pretty big thing. And mind you, if we wake up at 4 a.m., then we're not going to have really any time to prepare for our last class that we're going to teach. So kind of look around to see who's interested. And obviously myself and my partner, Anthony, are interested, and 3 other people decided to go with us. And so we make it a group. We all wake up the next morning at 4 a.m. The taxi picks us up at 4:15. We make our way down to, it's called Austin Wildlife Refuge. So we're in the Nicoya Peninsula in the Guanacaste province. And so Pacific Ocean. So we make our way down there and it's like chaotic. There's people all over the place with their red headlamps because turtles can't see the white light. They have to have the red. And long story short, we get out of the car and we hear them speaking Spanish and we can understand what they're saying. And they said, there's no turtles today. And so we were all like kind of standing there and we're like, well, what do we do? Do we still go? What do we do? And we're like, we're already down here. Let's go. And mind you, in the car on the way down, I literally told myself, because I have a really big problem with setting expectations and being disappointed. So in the car on the way down, I told myself, if I see 1 sea turtle, I'll be happy. And so we're talking to our tour guide and she says, there's 3 turtles on the beach. And we were like, okay, well, let's go. Because I told myself, if I see 1, it's fine.
Yeah.
So we go to the beach, and we see 1 sea turtle. And we watched her laying her eggs, and we watch her pack it down and kind of spin around and make her way back to the water. And as we're doing that, me and my yoga classmates were sending the turtles prana, which prana just means energy in Sanskrit. And so we're sending them prana and we're just praying for them and wishing them luck. And I'm talking to my friend Sydney and I said, well, you know what, like it does kind of stink because I really did want to see the sea turtle hatching. Like that's really what I wanted to see. Yeah. But I guess it's just not going to happen this trip. Like sea turtles, when they lay their eggs, they take 45 to 60 days for those eggs to hatch. And so I'm like, it's not going to happen. It's not in my cards. And I'm not kidding. Within 5 minutes, our tour guide comes over to us and says, there's a sea turtle hatching down at the end of the beach. And so me, and it's just the concept of letting go of the attachment of wanting and needing to see that. And I feel like it was just like, and the sun was rising and it was just a magical experience. And my friend Sydney and I are running down the beach because we're so excited and our tour guide's yelling at us. She's like, no, because we stop and we realize that you have to walk so delicately because these turtles are micro. I don't know how I thought they would be a lot bigger than what they were, but they were about the size of if you take your index finger and connect it to your thumb, creating a circle. That's how big they were.
Oh my gosh. That's tiny.
Tiny. And I think that it was just one of the most magical experiences I've ever witnessed. And you're sitting there on the sand, you're watching the turtles struggle. And we asked our tour guide, we said, can't we just pick them up and put them in? And she said, no, because during that time when they're walking to the ocean, they're learning how to move their flippers. They're learning how to breathe. They're opening their eyes. They're learning how to feel the vibration of the water.
Mhm.
And she said that if you literally just picked it up and put it in the water, it would die because it wouldn't go through the struggle that it needed to go through in order to live its life. And so
What a
I'm
beautiful
not gonna,
lesson that is, all in itself.
I mean, with these turtles, it was just insane. And I'm not gonna lie, I was full on crying my eyes out because I I just, it was one of the most grateful experiences I've ever had. And I just felt so at bliss and so fortunate to sit there and witness this. And then, not to mention, later that day, I knew that we were going to be graduating and we were going to be doing our last class, and the sun was rising. It's just like all
Wow.
of these were coming together, and I was crying and saying that it was the best day of my life. And like, it really was one of the best days of my entire life.
Right. Yes. Oh my gosh. And because you kind of went into it expecting, and then the disappointment and the letting go, and then it just all working out beautifully, like, woo, that's wonderful.
Yeah. Yeah. It was
And
unreal.
and I think that's a really tough thing to do, that letting go. Like, just realizing that you can put as many expectations on things outside of yourself as you want, but you will be disappointed because you're putting your expectations on things outside of you. You don't control any of that. So it's
Mhm.
so I think that's been one of the biggest and hardest lessons overall. And I still on a regular basis go, okay, let go. You don't control this time, this moment, this thing. Let it happen the way
Yeah.
it's going to happen. It's big.
Yeah. And it was definitely one of my favorite things that I learned in our teacher training was the concept of a parigraha. And that just means non-attachment.
Mm.
And when you think about it, you first you think like, oh, okay, my like personal possessions, like I need my car. Okay. Well, that's kind of different. Like if you feel like you need your car to get to your job, but it's more than just that. It's not being attached to emotions, not being attached to fear of the unknown, not being attached to expectations or outcomes, not being attached to expecting a thank you for doing something nice. And it just goes above anything. And ultimately, what we decided was we thought that it meant surrendering and letting go and truly just being in the present moment and taking it for what it is, and understanding too that everything is temporary. Like you
Yeah.
don't even have to be, you don't, even if you're in a present moment, like you don't have to be attached really to that present moment because every single thing is temporary in life.
Mm-hmm. I like that. Surrendering, letting go. It's just, it's huge. And it's not easy. It's not one of those things that you can just go, I'm just going to let go. And no, it takes
No,
an
yeah,
effort. You have to think about things. Yeah, it takes a little bit to get there. And like I said, I don't have it mastered by any means. I'm human and flawed. But I love that you let go. And within 5 minutes, it worked out exactly, really probably the
yeah,
way you wanted it to work out.
yeah. And it was crazy too, just because I remember telling that friend of mine, Sydney, when we were sitting on the beach looking at the turtle, and she's like, oh, what kind of turtle is this? It looks really small. And I was like, yeah, I think it's an olive Ridley green sea turtle. And don't quote me on that for sure, but I was like, I think that's what it is. And I was like, yeah, they're a lot smaller than like leatherback turtles. And then I was like, oh, I wonder if leatherback turtles nest here. And then as we're leaving, there's like this protected off gated area that literally said leatherback nesting area.
Oh,
And so it's just
wow.
like another example of just everything was so in line
Mhm.
that we were literally like, me and my friends, we were literally like, we got to get out of here because this is crazy. Like so much alignment is happening that this is just nuts. Like we couldn't
Yes.
believe it.
Yeah. Now, would you have thought in a million years that you would be going to Costa Rica to become a certified yoga teacher? Like 10 years
No,
ago, did you see yourself doing that at all?
no. And even like, because I actually just came across some photos that I had taken of myself 5 years ago before moving to Colorado. No, 4 years ago. And it was after college, and I was at like my heaviest weight. And I remember in those moments being so insecure, so down on myself. And I remember thinking that I was essentially lost. And then those pictures popped up as a memory. And then I looked at myself today, and I've lost like 35 pounds since then. And I'm a completely like different person. And I'm like, if I would have told that person in that photo that I would be where I am currently, I would have literally called you a complete freaking liar. I would have said
Like,
there's
what the
absolutely no
hell?
way.
Right.
Yeah, I would have said there's no way that I would ever do that, because not like you said earlier, in that state of where I was previously, like I would have never said yes to going to and doing something in the unknown.
Right.
And I would have never had the confidence to do that. And I also wouldn't even believe you if you would have said like, oh, you have like a very long, serious boyfriend too. I would have been like, no, you're a liar. And so I think that, yeah, and you think about like everything, just I really do believe everything works out for a reason. And I am extremely grateful to be where I am currently. And obviously I'm not perfect. I'm a flawed person, like you said earlier, but I think that thus far, like I feel like I've really laid the stepping stones.
Mm.
And especially for 2021, I think I sat down and really did a lot of work on myself. And now for 2022, I feel like I can actually walk across the path that I've laid.
Mm. Oh, that's beautiful. I like that. I love that. So when we talk about, like going on this yoga thing, and I call it turning inward, I think there's a point in pretty much everyone's life. And some people come to it young and some people come to it older. I love looking at you and Kelly and going, oh my God, you're coming to this at such a beautiful age that your whole life is before you. And to be able to look at things from an open mind, open heart kind of perspective, and really knowing who you are and what brings you joy. It doesn't mean you're always going to make the right decision. That's part of life, is, the ebb and flow and the good and the bad of it all. But I go, God, I came to this so much later, and you guys are coming to it so young. I think it's beautiful. What do you think your biggest, like, what have you learned about yourself that you go, I'm so glad I'm in touch with this, or that I've discovered this about myself? Is there anything that really stands out for you?
I think that one of the biggest things that I've really struggled with through life was just accepting
Mm-hmm.
myself. I think that we're our own worst critics. And obviously, like, I'm not 100% with this all the time, but I think that I do a lot better now with understanding if I start having like anxious thoughts, I can kind of view them from like an observer perspective. That's what we learned at our yoga training. And so you can kind of step back, look at your thoughts, and sometimes I'll be able to like pull myself out of it, and other times I go super deep. But
Mm-hmm.
it's like either way, I still can like step back and be like, okay, I'm really anxious right now, and I actually have an understanding of my feelings. And I think that I have compassion for myself in those moments, because I
Mm-hmm.
know that this isn't going to last forever. I used to always think that when I was anxious and I would go down spirals, that I was just going to have that way of thinking forever. And I was just going to be stuck in this perpetual cycle and never get out of it. And I think now I know that everything is temporary. And I think I just show myself so much more gratitude and love, like for my mental state, for my body. And I truly can honor and like love and appreciate my body for every stage that it's in. Like If
Mm-hmm.
I'm super bloated one day and I feel really gross, I'm literally like, okay, well, I guess I'm bloated today. Like, we're just going to move on with it. Like, instead of where before I would literally like be so insecure over that. And so I think
Yeah.
getting over those thoughts that really, really drag you down and understanding that you can just kind of like look at them and you don't have to feed them energy.
Mm-hmm.
And, but also if you do feed them energy, it's okay because we're human and we can't be 100% all the time.
Yes.
And it's actually something that I think I like really use in my yoga classes that I teach because
Mm-hmm.
I think specifically for beginners, when they go to yoga, a lot of times, at least I'm just going to speak from my own personal experience. Like when I first started going to yoga, I would kind of view my teachers as superior than me. And you immediately think like, oh, wow, like they're a yoga teacher. Like they have it all figured out. Like they're super centered, they're very grounded. And, but then you realize like they're just people too. And so in my yoga classes, I like to kind of incorporate a lot of themes into my class. So like self-love, letting go, acceptance, trust, coming home to your body, like things like that, that just kind of show. And I like to talk about maybe like a personal experience of mine, just to show that like we really are in this together.
Mm-hmm.
And there is no separation in yoga. Like when you're in a yoga class and you're all there, like you essentially become like one vessel of energy.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that that's something that I'm trying to incorporate into my classes and is going to be like a key component moving forward, just because I
Yeah.
think it's important to not have that feeling of separation. I just always want people to feel accepted and loved for who they are.
I like that you're doing the focus on something that brings everybody kind of together. It's a
Mm-hmm.
beautiful experience. Good for you. So let's talk a little bit about what you are going to do after going through all of this. What is it you want to do with your yoga now?
Well, it's really interesting because when I went into my training, I actually didn't have the intention of teaching at all. Like, I kind of just told myself I was mainly there to quote deepen my practice, which is what literally every single person there said with their intention. And it's like, of course we're all there. Of course we're all there to deepen our practice. We're at a yoga training. But
Right.
um I really was like not thinking that that was what I wanted to do. Because there was a fear component with it,
Mm.
a fear of getting up in front of people, a fear of being vulnerable and not accepted, and like just kind of like those insecurities that kind of start coming out when you have to do something that you're unfamiliar with. And it wasn't until like we all taught one class every week that was an hour long. And so unlike a lot of other trainings, sometimes they only teach 1 hour long class at the very end of their training, and we did three throughout the training. And so, but after that first one, I felt something spark up in me that I've never felt in my entire life. And maybe it was like the acceptance. And I think that what it boiled down to was I had confidence in myself that I haven't had before. And I really did trust myself and what I was doing in that moment, because going to a yoga teacher training at 20 years old and like quote not having a career established, and like sometimes family members or people kind of look in and they're just like, what are you doing? Like, this is insane. And so you kind of like have those judgments in the back of your mind and you're like, oh, this has to be worth it. But then like in that moment when I'm teaching that first class, I had that epiphany of like, yes, like I feel completely comfortable in this moment. And then yeah, obviously we practice more, and by the end of it I was speaking to my guru and was just telling her that I was like, I think I'm going to teach. And she told me that it would be like that I should 100% teach, that I have something special within me.
Mm.
And then maybe she just says it to everybody, but I was grasping onto it pretty hard because I'm like someone who I appreciate reassurance in like the workspace and personal relationships and stuff. And so to hear my teacher telling me that like she witnessed something in me that she knows I would be a really great teacher. And kind of what I'm leaning towards now, I just created a new Instagram for it called Summer Sunshine Yoga.
I
And
love that.
and that basically is, Summer Sunshine has been my nickname since I was a kid. So I just thought it kind of fit. And essentially what I want to do is maybe like one-on-one coaching in yoga to help people feel more comfortable and formulate specific plans for them to achieve their goals. And ultimately, the goal would be to have everyone find their inner sunshine, I like to call it, because yoga was what made me find my inner sunshine. Like, sure, my nickname has been Sunshine and Summer Sunshine since I was a kid, but I never believed that until now.
Right. Yeah. You're like, I didn't really connect with it. It wasn't at your core who you believed you were, and now you do.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah. Oh, I love
Yeah.
that. So you'll do more just like personalized one-on-one. I'm sure you'll teach some yoga classes too. Are you doing a little online as well, or are you really just focusing on individual?
Yeah, I've kind of started doing virtual, just doing like some beta testing with my family members and close friends and such. And I think once I figure that out, then I'd like to do the one-on-one stuff. Because I think that there's like a really big need for that. And I think especially with beginners and I mean, people, it can be for people at any stage in their life, because realistically, what I'm calling it is I'm going to be doing like empathy driven yoga asanas. And so essentially just a lot of themed classes that would get your mind to open up to some new concepts, and doing specific asana practices that would benefit that person. So like if they have a lot of trauma and they can't let go of the past, well, then we'd probably do a lot of like hip openers and a lot of hamstring type stuff, because those are the muscles and the joints that hold those emotions. And so I think that that's my dream job. And I have been getting like signs that I need to start small before we just like get huge with that. And quite frankly, I don't really know how to even go about that yet. So I'm just starting small with my virtual classes. And then once I get back down into Boulder, since I'm up in the mountains right now, once I get back to Boulder and it's kind of settled in, I'll probably teach at some studios and or do like yoga in the park and do some outdoor yoga and stuff like that. But
I think
yeah,
that's
in the
cool.
meantime, that's what I'm doing.
Yeah, no, I think that's great. And I love that the advice was to take your time and really master the yoga you want to do and be. And that's awesome. I'm so excited for you.
Yay.
Yeah. Well, it's funny because as you were kind of talking about your connecting with yourself and the confidence piece, and I do think that is a big thing for, I can only speak for the female perspective, but I do think for young women, confidence is so important, and it is, everyone has it. We just have to connect with it, and that you found the strength. I think there's a thing in strength. When you find that you're stronger than you think you are, there's confidence that builds, and then you can just kind of layer it from there. Yeah, I think it's great.
Exactly. Yeah. And I think that like you can get very caught up in, because everyone has traumas and everyone obviously has a past. And I think that sometimes your body holds on to all those traumas and your mind does too, but a lot of times your mind tries to erase it. And then things get popped up and you're triggered. But then at the same time, you have these suppressed memories, but you don't maybe always remember that you went through that to remind you that you are strong. And so you kind of just feel like, oh yeah, I don't know, like I'm not I'm like insecure because I've never done this or that. And
Yeah.
Um,
Or it wasn't that big a deal. And you're like, no, that was
yeah,
trauma. It's a big deal. Don't downplay
exactly.
that. Yes.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And it does. I think that's so important too. I love that you're learning all of this about trauma as well, that it does stay trapped in our bodies. We when we don't get to fully process it, it does stay trapped. And the hips, mine's right now, all in here. That's immediately where I feel everything. But yeah, I think it's wonderful. I watched was telling Kelly about this. I watched a video on these guys tracking a polar bear, and they go after this polar bear. They shoot it, not shoot it, but they put it to sleep because
Uh-huh.
they're tracking it and getting some recordings off of it or whatever. But anyway, as they're done with all of their documenting stuff, the guy says, now watch, this polar bear is going to begin to shake, and he's going to shake, and then he's going to take 2 big deep breaths and release. And after that, he'll be in a calm state. Animals naturally process their trauma. He had been traumatized by the chase, the getting hit by the dart gun, all of that. And his body was naturally processing this trauma by the shaking, the breath, and releasing it. And as humans, we tend to not release that, not take a moment to really process it, to shake it off. To quote Taylor Swift,
Yeah.
to really literally shake it off and release it and take the breath and let it leave our body. And that's why some people experience, when they go through a traumatic experience, they may start shaking, and it's natural and it's a beautiful thing. Like, let your body do that. It's a release, but we tend to just hold on to it, and then it's just stuck in our body.
Yeah. Are you familiar with the book, The Four Agreements?
Yes. One of
By,
my
okay.
favorite, Miguel.
Yeah, it's
Yes.
literally my favorite
Luis.
book. And I think that that book is my Bible. I've read it multiple times, and I brought it with me to Costa Rica again. And I actually loaned it out to some people at my yoga training because, one, if anyone is listening, then they should read it, because not
Yes.
only is it extremely easy to read, it's literally like 7 chapters, but there's no extra fluff in it, and it's straight to the point. But I think that one of the number one things that I take out of that book
Mm-hmm.
that I find really interesting is that humans are the only species on earth that will like continually punish ourselves for the same mistake over and over. And that's essentially because we have memories. And so like anytime you have a memory, then you punish yourself over and over for it.
Mm.
And like you said, like they get stuck in your body. And that's just why why yoga is so important, because yoga is obviously way more than just the physical movements. The
Yes.
physical movements are called asanas, which is essentially just the movement of energy throughout your body. But yoga is also the breath, and there's like actually 8 paths to yoga, but like breath in the asana is extremely important, and really important with how it connects to your chakra system too, which I think that was like, when I was in my teacher training, I thought that was fascinating to learn more about the chakras, because for example, like your root chakra is like your grounding, like your security, like you want to feel stable, your financial security, like at peace, comfortable with yourself, stuff like that. And I feel like I have personally always had a really hard time in that department, because I always feel very like insecure in money, in job, like in housing, in sometimes relationships, like stuff like that. And so my root chakra a lot of times is out of balance. And what's interesting is the root chakra being out of balance is directly related to symptoms of IBS. And like I've been diagnosed with IBS before.
Wow.
And what's crazy is like when I've taken time to balance my root chakra, especially during our yoga teacher training, I didn't have any problems. So it's really like, some people might think that it's like, ooh, chakra system, but like, I personally think that it's like very real. And because we are just like energetic beings. And so like, why wouldn't you have different parts in your body for different energies. Like,
Mhm.
you know what I mean? And
Yes.
so, and I think that like one thing too is like your throat chakra is related to thyroid problems. So like a lot
Mm.
of autoimmune diseases are related to your throat chakra. So like if you have problems communicating or you're holding back or things like that. And so I don't
Yeah.
know, I just think it's like really, really interesting to learn about.
It is. And I took some other classes on the polyvagal system, the nervous system. I've just become fascinated with the body and the yoga and the chakras, because these same bands within the scientific space are
Mhm.
in the exact same spaces as the chakras. So I was just kind of like, okay, it's a real thing. And I'm
Exactly.
like, yoga's huge with it, just body movement. That's what another thing I kind of want to stress too is like, don't get caught up in the name yoga. Think about it as just body movement. Yes, there's so much that goes into yoga and there's a great history there, but some people kind of get intimidated by the yoga because they go, I can't put my feet behind my ears. That doesn't have to be your yoga.
Right.
It's about movement and kind of opening things up and releasing and yeah, connecting. And it's just amazing and beautiful.
Yeah, I think that that's super important because people will often say, oh, I can't do yoga, I'm not flexible, or like, wait, wow, you're way better at yoga than I am. And essentially, one, you don't have to be flexible to do yoga. And two, there isn't a good or bad with yoga because that's also part of um, some characteristics within yoga of like not having labels. And
Yeah.
so there is no good and bad because what I'm doing is just for me and what you're doing is just for you. And when people say like your body, your yoga, it
Mm-hmm.
truly is your body, your yoga. Someone could be doing the splits and you could be sitting Indian style, just sitting there, and it would be fine because that's what you're intended to do in this moment. Like, you don't need to go and push yourself beyond your limitations to try to do the splits.
Yes. Yes. Because I do chair yoga and it's amazing and it's not strenuous and it's age friendly. Anyone can do it. And I just think there's so many different types. And I love that you're doing the individualized. Like that's really where you want to focus because I do think, and that you're doing like the theme thing because there's so much in that for each person. And we all come to it needing something different from it. So I love that you're doing that.
Yeah. And definitely
Good for
just
you.
incorporating, showing people like the modifications of certain poses. That way they know, like, oh, wow, yeah, I can do this. And ultimately, like, leading up to maybe a goal of, I don't know, doing something that they never thought they'd be able to do before.
Yeah.
And it doesn't have to be like flexibility either, because you can get so much more strength from your muscles from yoga too, just because you're utilizing the micro muscles and you're using like some of the larger muscles too. But a lot of times in like balancing postures, you're really targeting those micro muscles,
Mm.
and that can help you later in life with walking, something like as simple as walking, and strengthening those muscles could take tension out of your knee, could take tension out of your hip.
Yeah.
And so it's really, really beautiful just because it is just a movement and it's fluid and it's, it is personalized. Even if you were to go to a class with like 25 people in it, like it is individualized. Yes, everyone might be doing the same thing or relatively the same thing, but it boils down to it's your practice, like it's your headspace. If someone offers an intention like I do in my classes, like you don't have to take that intention. Like you can just go off on your own. You can think of something else. Like, and I think that what's really nice is even if I offer an intention, every single person that I was teaching, they're all thinking something different.
Absolutely. Yes. The same intention could be completely different for you and I. Like, no matter what you throw out there, where I take it internally will be a different experience. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that if you are open and vulnerable
Mm.
to the practice of yoga, then you you'll see a lot of improvement in your life. Because I personally feel like yoga is my therapy.
Yes, yes. I've had people say, Sunday church yoga because it's where they reconnect and feel connected, and it brings them so much peace. And I'm like, yes, it's a beautiful thing. But it is what you get out of it, what you need to get out of it, what you want. Um,
Mhm.
Everybody's experience is going to be something different, but I'm just a huge fan of do it, try it. Like, don't get in there and feel like you've got to be like the teacher. Just start where you can start and take the first step and go to a class and
Yeah.
just start moving. Yeah.
And I think that it's really interesting because there were actually a few people in my yoga teacher training who were very new to yoga.
Mm-hmm.
And like, one girl didn't even practice like traditional yoga asanas. Like, she was doing more like breath work and stuff like that. And
Mm-hmm.
so she really was like completely unfamiliar. And um, multiple times throughout the training, like, I would share my experience because those 5 months before, when I was going consistently, like, I really saw an improvement in my practice, like,
Mm-hmm.
especially in my strength. And so, and by like the third month of going consistently, something clicked in my mind where it wasn't necessarily like, oh, I have to go to yoga today. It wasn't like I have to go so I can get a workout in. It
Mm-hmm.
was because that was like the type of yoga I was doing, but it wasn't even in that frame of mind. It was like, I just need to go. And it's like the second you get on your mat, and I would always like lay there and run my hand across my mat to the edge where it met the floor and just like touch it. And I would just take a few breaths and I would feel gratitude to the point where
Wow.
I'd like almost cry every single
Yeah.
time because I was just grateful that I had a body that was allowing me to do this practice. And so, and I was sharing some of these stories with at my training, and I had told a story about how I wasn't able to do chaturanga, which is what you're in between when you're in vinyasa flow. It's like essentially a tricep push up down and your arms that are about a 90-degree angle. And so I was never able to hold myself in that position. Like, my legs were always kind of flopped down or just didn't have very good form. And so I was telling them that for like 2 months, like, I was like, I'm not even going to try to do this correctly because I know that it's going to, like, it could lead to injury, but also I would just get a better result if I put my knees down on the floor
Mm.
to have that extra support. Then I can actually do it. And so I did that. Like, I listened to my body for 2 months. And was everyone else in the class doing that? No, but I'm like really proud of myself because there would have been a different point in my life where I would be like forcing myself to try to do it the
Whoosh.
correct way, and
Mm.
ultimately like hurting myself or hurting my shoulders doing it. And so I really listened to myself, did it with my knees down. And then now, like, at my training, my teacher used me as an example of like how to do it the correct posture. And so when I shared this, I'm like, yeah, like, this is where I was like 3 months ago. And these girls who had never done it before, they were like, what? Like, that's so inspiring. And my teacher appreciated me sharing those stories because I think it just boils down to the fact that, like, if you commit to something and you're consistent, like, you're gonna see results.
Mm-hmm.
So you can't, if you want to be able to, if your goal in yoga is to be able to do the splits and you only practice the splits 1 time a week and
Yeah.
you want to be able to do it in like a month, that's just not going to happen
Right.
because you're not going to be consistent. So yeah, I think it's putting in the work and such, but I've really enjoyed it because then you can see the impact that it's having on your body too.
Yeah.
It's a little bit of a
Absolutely.
reward.
Yeah. And that's a key point is listen to your body. You're going to learn a lot about listening to yourself in yoga and really connecting with that and that compassion piece. Because had you pushed yourself, like you said, you probably would have hurt a shoulder or something if you had continued to push versus putting the knees down and building the strength that needed to be built to hold the rest
Mhm.
of the pose. Yeah. So it's like getting in tune with your body. I love saying it's your yoga, your way. Do only what you and your body choose to do today because you're ultimately the one who knows what your body can do on any given day. I can't always do the same thing. Sometimes I'm way more flexible, and sometimes I'm just not. It's like, gotta listen
Yeah.
to that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that one thing that we learned at our training was that as you go out into the world and you become a yoga teacher, it's really important to maintain your own personal practice.
Mm-hmm.
And our teacher was kind of telling us that, like, a lot of times, I mean, she can't speak for everybody, but a lot of times people don't have a personal practice. They're a teacher and they're maybe teaching like 3 classes a day. So they may not want to do their own personal practice, but she was saying that it's so important to maintain your personal practice. That way, then you're in a centered position before you go and teach. And also so that you're aware of like your own body limits. That way, then like you're not going into a class teaching something that your body does not want to do.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that that's really important. And I actually, like, when I got back from my training, I kind of had a little bit of an injury. And so I've been nursing this injury for the past couple of weeks and going to physical therapy. And so I was still doing my yoga practice every morning, but it looked different. And it was hard at first because, like, sometimes I'm not perfect. I get in my head and I start, like, if I'm doing my own practice, I'm like pounding out all these like really hard poses and I'm just challenging myself, which it's good to do that sometimes,
Yes,
but
absolutely.
like not always. And you kind of like get caught up in your ego a little bit. And so you're like, whoa, I need to like dial it back here. Like, my ego is very strong right now. And so when this injury happened, I really had to push that ego aside and say, I just have to do what I feel is right. And so some days my yoga practice is just like a really long meditation and a few stretches. And other days it's like a full on hour or 2 hour practice, like whatever I'm feeling. But I think that this injury has been kind of a blessing because I've learned a little bit more of how to listen to my body, because sometimes it's easy to push beyond your limitations. And with an injury, it's like, okay, I can't, because I literally cannot do it.
Yeah.
And so finding that compassion for yourself of, nope, I'm just going to stay right here. And yep, it looks completely different than what it did a month ago, but here we are.
Yeah.
And so you
And
kind of
it's
have to take it.
temporary.
And even recognizing like the difference between your right side body and your left side body, and how, and also just the fact that your right side body is the solar side, it's the more masculine side of your body, and your left side is your moon side and your more feminine side. And so having that understanding, that, and it's super interesting. I don't know, like I think about it and like I always think how my right side body is a little bit more tight than my left side body. And I think it's because your right side body is that masculine energy. And so I think that there's like more ego that goes into my right side, because it's like my dominant writing hand, my dominant foot. And so it's a little bit more like rough and rigid compared to my left side of being like way more fluid and not tight. So it's, I don't know, that's kind of like another like,
I had not heard that. I'm thinking, wow, okay. As you're talking, I'm like tuning into my body going, yep. Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. I just learned something new. I love that. I had not connected that. Did you learn that through yoga, through the yoga?
My yoga training. Yeah. We learned that.
Oh, that's beautiful. I love it. Wow. Look at you, girl. I'm so proud of you. Yay, you.
Thanks.
Well, let's do this. Let's share how could someone connect with you for attending a yoga class if you're doing something online. I know you've got is it Summer Sunshine Yoga?
Yeah. So my Instagram handle is summer.sunshine.yoga.
Okay.
And I also do have an email address, which would be summer.sunshine.yoga@gmail.com.
Great.
So they can reach out that way. I do have a waiver and questionnaire set up. So like if someone is interested, then I can get a little bit more feedback from them on if they're a beginner, if they're more intermediate, advanced. I can really work with anybody. So yeah, those would be my best modes of contact. I will be making a Facebook page here shortly, but it's not live yet.
Okay, no, that's great. What I'll do too is for the video, anyone connecting with the video, I'll run it across the bottom so it'll be there. And then it's always in the description on the podcast and on the YouTube channel. So it'll
Cool.
be there for people to connect with you. And thanks so much for coming on and sharing your experience. I love that you were brave and went to Costa Rica just to deepen your yoga practice. And now you're going to be teaching the rest of us. And I can't wait to come and participate.
Yeah, I'm hoping that some people hear this and maybe are inspired, and
Yes,
if not, that's okay too. But
absolutely.
I'd love to help. And ultimately, I think that like it's kind of interesting because my life has come full circle. Like I always thought I wanted to be in education, and I always wanted to be in education because I just loved connecting with people. And realistically, I can do all of those things through yoga.
Yes. Isn't that
So
amazing? You knew it was some sort of education, but you went traditional education, and now look, it's led you right around to this beautiful yoga connection education piece. And I think you'll just keep digging into that and going deeper. It's going to be wonderful to watch you grow. Yay.
Yes, I'm very excited, and I think there's going to be in the future some big things coming with my summer sunshine yoga. I'm manifesting it now, putting it in the universe.
I love that. That's what you got to do. You got to visualize it and it will happen. Do you do a vision board or any of that?
Yeah, I do. And it's kind of interesting because last year for 2021, I did a vision board and I never really like looked at it. And then it wasn't until we were about to leave for Costa Rica and we had to pack all of our stuff. And I looked back at the vision board, and on the vision board, because I had cut out like a lot of pieces from the magazines and stuff like that and pasted it on there. And there was a little one that I pasted on the very bottom that said, "I promised myself I would see the world." And I was like, what? Like that's my traveling. Like, whoa, I didn't even believe that. Like, it's crazy.
Yeah. And that's what I love about doing the vision board. I've done one for quite a few years now, and I'm always amazed that I'll look back over a year and take a look at it and I'm like, yep, did that. I've got one like right here. and I'll go, oh yeah, I did that. And oh my gosh, look at that. Small little, they're just like, you're just putting the thought out there and then it just kind of grows from there. Yeah, I love doing them. If anybody's listening and you've never done a vision board, I highly recommend. I do have like a whole thought process behind it. Like so you can really kind of think about all the areas of your life. You can do that. But for the most part, it's basically grab some magazines, thumb through them, pull out words and pictures that speak to you, put them on your board. And it's amazing how it comes together because I've pulled stuff out before. And then when I go to put them on the board, I don't even use the ones that like in a moment seemed really like a big deal. But when I go to put the board together, I'm like, isn't that interesting how it all came together? There's a lot of beach on mine right now. So I'm like, I can't wait to go to the beach.
Yeah. What we did at our yoga teacher training too was like, we all wrote down intentions for life after our teacher training. And in true yogic fashion, we put those in like a little coconut that floats, and we put them out into the ocean and we let go of it. We didn't have attachment to the intentions, because if you let go of it, then you're not like hyper fixated on it. Because I don't know, you could always like make a vision board, and then if you look at it every single day, like remind you of your goals, but also like if you become hyper fixated on it, then that's not going to help anything. The universe would actually probably work against you in those moments.
Yeah, because you try to start controlling things.
Right.
And it's like that won't work. That's why I'm like, I look at it and I'm like, oh, I like the words on there. But I don't like go, oh yeah, I gotta do that. I just look at it and go, that is so cool. And then I go about it. And then you'll come back in like 3 or 4 months and you look at it and you're like, oh, did that, been there. It's crazy. I love it.
Yep. We actually also did a full moon ceremony with some random people that I met in Costa Rica. They like walked up to me when I was having dinner, and there was two girls, and my partner and I went with them, and they were going to invite other friends too, but they all bailed, and ended up just being like Anthony and I, and then the two girls, and then one of them, their partner also. And so it was like a very like small, intimate full moon ceremony. We had like cacao, and we did yoga and did vision boards and did all sorts of things, but like it was just really crazy. And you were literally like, we were in the middle of the jungle getting chewed alive by mosquitoes, and you're with these like complete random people from Canada, Germany, and I think Spain, and you're just like, yeah. And it was amazing. Like I kept the vision board. I put it like in the back of my journal, and yeah, that was like one of my favorite moments there too, because it was just saying yes to something that I would have always said no to.
Yeah. Isn't that amazing when you just kind of open up even just a little bit and start saying yes to things that scare you, that, like you said, you would normally say no to? It's amazing what it leads to, the next thing and the next thing. And so cool.
Yeah.
Love it. Hey, I was going to ask you too, so like traveling to Costa Rica and kind of experiencing different culture, did you connect with that?
It's kind of interesting. Costa Rica is a very interesting country because we went all over the place, and I feel like unfortunately a lot of the quote culture of Costa Rica has kind of been lost.
Oh, yeah.
At least in the areas where we were going, which were a little bit more touristy, but like everyone spoke English.
Yeah.
And also it's just really interesting because when I went to Costa Rica 12 years ago for a Spanish trip in high school, like you were just forced to like use your best vocabulary to figure out what they were saying, and people would work with you, and you would kind of just try to form a conversation. And this time it was very different. Like if you spoke Spanish to someone and it was very obvious that like your Spanish sucked, then they would just reply to you in English, because they're not going to like take the time to like try and help you hone in on your Spanish skills.
Right.
So that was kind of interesting. And I think that some areas in Costa Rica where there's still a very large culture is down in Puerto Viejo. It's on the Caribbean side, like super far south, like almost Panama. And
wow.
yeah, and it has a very strong Jamaican influence. So like when I was there, I literally thought and felt like I was in Jamaica. Like you eat Caribbean food, like the food there is completely different than the rest of Costa Rica.
Wow.
And so that was really cool to experience that. And but other than that, like Costa Rica still has the culture of pura vida, pure life. And I remember that from when I went before, but it's just hilarious because everyone is on like this pura vida time. Like no one cares about time. Like
I love that.
If you're like, we were like 2 hours late for when we got to the airport for our driver, and he was just like, pura vida, like no big deal, like don't worry about it. And we're like, being our classic Midwest selves, we're like, I'm so sorry, like I don't want to burden you. and he's just like, pura vida. And it's just like this idea that your life, like you have a pure life, and they use pura vida to say hello, to say goodbye, to say thank you, to say literally anything. It says like, how do you want to communicate with a Costa Rican? Pura vida, because that's just the way it is. Like that's just their life. And I think that that's really interesting. And then also the fact that when we got over to the Pacific side, one of the cultures we kind of realized too with language was everyone just says todo bien, like all good. So it seems like Costa Ricans, they're very laid back. Like they don't have as much stress, and they all just like work and do what they can, and they spend time with their family. Costa Ricans love to do like really big lunches together. So you'll find that like a lot of stores and offices will be closed from like 12 to 2 because they all go home to have like huge family lunches.
Wow.
And so, yeah, there's definitely that component that I feel like makes you really appreciate. makes you really appreciate it and makes you want to carry that over to the United States, maybe.
Yeah. You're like, we could learn a little something, like slow down
Yeah.
just a little bit. Yes. Yeah, I do think there's like some of that, the overachieving, we need to push ourselves constantly. And a lot of other countries don't do that. That is kind of an American thing. It's like, breathe, live life, enjoy, have some fun. Yeah.
Absolutely.
I'm just so glad you got to come on and share your adventure with me. I was so excited when you got back, and I'm like, I can't wait to talk to her. Thanks.
Yeah, I will say, like, I feel like I have so much more to say about like my specific learnings from my training, just because I think that if anyone is out there like considering doing a yoga teacher training, to do it, like, and go into it with like no expectations. That was like my biggest thing. And I think that if you go into it without expectations, you'll have like a very positive experience, as long as you choose like a training that you're very called to. But yeah, it's very transformative and enlightening, and kind of like I said earlier, like now I can walk that path that I've laid the stones on. I feel like my training kind of just gave me like a little kick right in the butt to like push me a couple stones, like to actually start walking, because it's scary to enter into this like new realm. And I'm in this process of trying to like formulate a business, and I've never done this before. And I know that like my passion is I just want to make a difference, and I just want to help people and have people like find their inner love for themselves and to be connected with themselves. And so, yeah, I appreciate you having me on so I can talk about my experience and my new business venture.
Yes. Yeah. And I honestly, I would love to have you back on, and anytime you want to talk about anything like on the inward journey, because I think the more we talk about it, the more people open up to experiencing it for themselves, because we all come to that inward journey when we're ready for it. And you can't force, like anything, you can't force anyone to go there. That's why I love just continuing to talk to therapists, spiritual people, writers, because there's a lesson in everything we do, literally a lesson for us to learn something, to grow, to teach others. So I love that you're on that path too, wanting to really share and just help others kind of experience what you've experienced. That's where it starts. It's like, start your healing process and then start helping others.
Absolutely. Yeah. And if people go to my Instagram, I'll be kind of sharing on there my personal learnings and my experiences. And I just really want it to be a page where I'm vulnerable and open, so people feel comfortable to share and things like that. So yeah.
Again, thank you so much for coming on and sharing your experience with all of us.
Thank you for having me.
And to all of you out there, thank you for tuning in, listening, and watching. Be sure to hit the like and subscribe buttons, as well as that notification bell, so you'll know when I put out a new episode. Thanks again for joining. Stay safe, stay curious, and I'll see you next time.